Devam ediyoruz. Şimdi çağıracak olduğum keynote speech konuşmacımızın hakkında ben çağırmadan önce kısa bir bilgilendirme yapmak istiyorum. Dr. Michael Salmony is an internationally recognized leader on strategy of business innovations in digital and financial service with a particular focus on payments, open banking, fintech and digital identify. Ve değerli alkışlarınızla konuşmaları için davet ediyoruz. Payments Innovation Executive Advisor, CEO Fintech Istanbul Strategic Partner, dear Mr. Dr. Michael Salmony. Hello, dear Salmony. Welcome.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much for the invitation to come to your lovely city and to this fantastic event. You've probably heard quite a lot of presentations today already, but the good news is I'm not here to sell you anything. I am here only to give you a bit of an overview of maybe what is going on in B2B around the world and what the major trends in innovating that space are. I can talk a little bit about that because I work in payment innovations in Turkey, in the Middle East, in Latin America, in Asia, everywhere. So I've tried to bring together a little of the things that we're seeing in this space. First of all, I'm really thrilled that this is actually a B2B event. You don't get many of those. Most of them are about some consumer stuff. And I always find that a bit surprising because, of course, most of the economy is B2B. That's where the money is. So if you just take a helicopter view of the economy, it is all banks and governments and merchants and SMEs and hospitals and corporates all paying each other and working together. And there's only a tiny bit at the bottom, which is actually towards the consumer. So B2B is clearly very much the largest part of the economy. Although, as I said, most events, most media, most regulator only look at wearables and consumer stuff. That is, of course, much more sexy than looking at invoices and cash flow management. But this, of course, is maybe only just more entertaining. And what I'm saying here is backed up not just by this graphic, but also by the numbers. If you look at any report anywhere, you will always see that B2B is about 90% of the business of an economy. We seem to focus only on the 10% for some reason. So about 90% is B2B, and it doesn't matter which report you look at and which area you look at, that is globally the case. And even some companies which we all think of as big consumer brands, like Amazon, right? We all buy our cables and books and things from Amazon. They actually have a loss-making arm on the left, which is their consumer business. They don't really make any money there. They make all their money in B2B. They make their money in cloud services, in fulfillment, and all that. So even companies like Amazon, which we think of as consumer, are massively a B2B company. So all the successful companies that are really making money are there. So it is always a surprise for me, I work a lot with banks and with regulators, that they don't see that. You know, banks think that they are serving corporates and SMEs very well, if you ask them. But if you actually ask the customers, they usually say, no, the banks aren't serving me well at all. This is not my opinion. This is backed up with many surveys and many evidences around the world. The banks are not really addressing this B2B market with their needs. And we'll go into some of the needs in a moment. And that's why this is a huge opportunity for the fintech scene. There are lots of clever companies who are now coming up and saying, this is where the money is. This is not working very well. Let us make it better because the incumbents are not serving it well. And here's just one example, and I could pick many more from around the world. These are two lovely young ladies, one from Goldman and one from Apple, who saw this B2B opportunity, said it's a $120 trillion opportunity. Things are not working well, it's not being served by the government, blah, 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 and therefore we can do a startup. And these guys know what they're doing, of course. Apple and Goldman, they really know how to do payments and finance. So when these people start coming in and competing against banks, it's going to be a real problem for banks if they're not prepared for these developments. Just one last statistic. This is one from McKinsey, which also shows that the disruption, which everybody thought would happen in consumer, is actually now shifting towards B2B. And there are many examples around the world. I was recently in the Nordics. Nordea was one of the pioneers in open banking and these digital innovations. They started off in the consumer space. Now they've completely pivoted and are only looking at the corporate and the SME market. And you see hundreds, if not thousands, of these examples around the world. B2B is where the action is, and that's why I'm so thrilled that this event is focused exactly on that. And this seems to be also true in Turkey. You know this market much better than me, but just to pull out a quick statistic from OECD here, you know, the SMEs are 99.8% of the Turkish economy. And the Turkish banks seem to be focusing on the 0.2%, as everywhere around the world. At least not, it doesn't have the focus that it wants. So you see that these SMEs, as everywhere around the world, they are thinking of not working with banks, getting their financing elsewhere, getting their invoicing, their bill payments and everything, getting that from fintechs and from other smart players. This is a real problem for banks, or going to be very soon, and already is in some regions, because the focus is just not on the major market. And I can speak to that a little bit as well, because the SME market is one that is particularly underserved. And I'm an SME, I'm a company of less than 250 employees, and we occasionally send out bills when we do some consulting or give some speeches or whatever, and the lady in our back office sends out a paper invoice or sends a PDF which says, to this bank account, please, this many euros, by this date and with this tax. And then we wait a few weeks, and then something comes back from the bank. And you can see, I don't know if you can see, the garbage that comes back from the bank. It is an absolute nightmare. It's a lot of hexadecimal numbers and crunched up figures and data. And the poor lady in my back office now has to reconcile this incoming payment with the invoice we sent out weeks ago. Is it the right amount? Did he get the right currency? Was the tax deducted? Etc., etc. Now, for us, it's not a problem because we don't have thousands of invoices, but it is a friction. A lot of SMEs, the wife of the owner will sit at the kitchen table doing invoices over the weekend. And this is not where we should be in 2023. It is an even bigger problem for the larger you get. For example, Telecom Italia have hundreds of people doing nothing but this, reconciling incoming payments. You know, they have all these telephone bills, and people send in 57 euros 23, pay bill is the reference. And now they have to work out which bill is this? Is that for the September month or for the January month? Maybe the father paid it for the son. You know, it is very hard to do this. Sorry, I'm spending a bit of time just to give one example of where the friction is in this market. And this topic of e-invoicing is huge. There are billions and billions of these pieces of paper being sent around the world, and people sitting on kitchen tables typing in IBAN numbers and checking whether the amounts are correct. This cannot be anymore. And that's why a lot of smart fintechs are offering invoicing and billing solutions. But that's just one example. Just to give you one more, is financing. SMEs often need more capital because they want to buy another machine or want to expand into another region. And again, the banks are not serving them well because they think, oh, this little SME, who knows, it might fall over tomorrow. So a lot of these SMEs are financed by friends and family or financed by alternative funding sources like crowdfunding and whatever. And this is becoming huge. And this is really something that is really impacting the core business of banks. Banks are basically lending books. That is the core of what a bank is. And if suddenly 99.8% of an economy move over and get their lending somewhere else, this is going to be a problem. And just to give one example of an attacker who is very good in this space is PayPal, not a very new fintech. But PayPal, for example, serves a lot of merchants. If they're on some platform, they will get their revenue through PayPal. You know, customers pay for the bit of electronics they've bought using PayPal on eBay. So PayPal knows very well how much a merchant earns. And therefore it knows, oh, these guys have a regular cash flow, they make about 10,000 euros a month, I can give them a loan for 20,000, that will not be a problem. because they have all the data, they have the information, they have the digital connection, they know all about this company. So that's an example how an existing fintech is already going into the lending business and not just into the payment business. And they have billions of dollars of business in this space. I've only given you just two examples, invoicing and financing, but these are part of a wider trend which some people call the democratization of digital financial services. It sounds a bit grand, but it used to be that only big companies and big banks had a digital connection. So BASF and Deutsche Bank, you know, if they needed FX and some dollars or some money to China, they of course had API connections and digital things. But this digital connection isn't typically between your local bank and a little SME. But this is now being democratized. So everybody can get digital finance, can get digital innovation and all the other stuff. It's being democratized that everybody has access to that. And that is completely revolutioning this service. And if you don't believe me, here again, just a few numbers, where you can see how the fintechs and the big techs are completely exploding in this space. The rise of fintech and big tech lending, if you can't read it, the pink thing are the fintechs and the blue things are the big techs. So you can see actually there was a peak for the fintechs, but now it's the big techs who are doing the lending. And that is super scary, right? If we get sort of Apple and Google and these other guys starting to do the lending for your corporates, that's not where banks, something that banks want to see. And those, I only gave you two examples, the sort of invoicing example and the financing. There are many more, right? There's the whole topic of liquidity management, which Selim mentioned at the beginning, cash flow and how do you predict how much money you will have next month, how much is coming in, how much you're expecting to go out. That's a huge topic, which now with modern data tools you can of course do much better. How do you automate things, the cash to purchase and purchase to pay and order to cash cycles? How do you do cross-border better? Increasingly we're getting a global economy. So how do you connect to other countries, do the FX, do the tax in an automated way? There are many, many more. And this is why I was interested to see the presentations before were largely about how a point of sale service accepts a card. I think the topic of B2B is a lot bigger than that, and here are just a few examples. If you want to hear more about this, there are a few flyers on your tables because we're organizing with FinTech Istanbul an event in Japan where also B2B is an absolutely huge topic, and there are some of the topics you will see on the flyer that we're addressing there. So I hope you'll all come to us. Please connect to me on LinkedIn and you'll get a discounted ticket. But just to return back to the fintech landscape, it is very big. I've only given you a very small snippet of what is happening there. There are actually whole ecosystems of fintechs emerging now, solving all the pain points that corporates and SMEs have. Every single little bit where an SME has a problem, you will find a handful of fintechs already addressing that. And that's fantastic because we want innovation, we want competition, we want more straight-through processing, but I'm afraid the banks are really missing out here. There are also some Turkish fintechs, which I'm sure I don't need to tell you, but these are the ones that at least people outside Turkey are aware of and have on the radar. But there are clearly many more. So congratulations on your very vibrant B2B fintech scene. One, for example, for farmers, right? There are areas where farming is a big market, where they have a lot of needs which are not being served. And it's very good that every little niche has somebody working on it to try and make it better. So I am already at the end. Just to quickly summarize what I tried to say here. Everybody's always focusing on the wrong thing. It's all about the consumer stuff, you know, the wearables and the sexy stuff. I understand that, but that's not where the business is. The business is where B2B is, because that's where the big volumes are. That's where the big frictions are. That's actually where it's hardly regulated, much less, so you have much more potential to have a business case. The corporate customers are willing to pay to have a solution made, which consumers aren't. So for all the reasons I've tried to show you, I think B2B is exactly the place to be. We now have the technology, we have the data, we have all the possibilities to now do much better than we can. and especially in the SME market. That is the biggest part of thing, not just the large corporates. And that's why we're getting this democratization of financial services. It's not just for a select few big corporates with their ERP systems. It is for every little SME, a farmer, a self-employed person, a market stall holder, somebody who manufactures something, and these are the people where the big potential is. So I am thrilled that you're doing B2B here, and I hope I've been able to contribute a little bit to the sort of more global view of what is going on in that space, and congratulate you on your initiatives here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, dear Mr. Salmony,
Thank you very
to
much.
be in here and information.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Teşekkür ediyoruz ve işte bu güzel buluşmanın, summit buluşmamızın esas aslında enerji